Hello, Bond fan. Oh, wait a minute, you've probably only come from part 2 of this. Okay, so this is the spoiler edition of my post-Spectre immediate analysis, so please do not watch this video if you haven't seen Spectre. Like, seriously, just don't. Don't spoil it for yourself. Don't have, great, surprises and, things ruined by me prattling on, Wait until it's out and then come back to this. I have a spoiler-free analysis, which you can find elsewhere on the channel. But yeah, this version is the spoiler version. So I have some notes. So if you do see me looking down at any point, it's because I'm looking at my notes. And so I guess we start at the beginning of the film, right? Gun barrel. Gun barrel is back. Gun barrel is back at the front of the film, which is so. When seeing the dot go along screen, I was just like, yes, oh my god, it's back. And then it happened, and it's not as good as the previous ones, which I was so, bearing in mind I've only seen this film once, so I could be remembering it slightly different. Only a day's passed, but I was just like, they just haven't got the look of the gun barrel right since Pierce Brosnan, and I just don't understand why. It's Daniel Kleinman doing it again. Why do they change the look of it so much? I don't get it. The original is classic and iconic and doesn't look dated in any way. I don't know why they just don't do that. And then I absolutely hated how it faded out completely, and then to black, and then there was a subtitle thing, and I can't remember what it said. It was something like "The Dead Are Alive" or "The Dead Are Walking" or something like that. It was, I thought it was a pretentious flair that I thought had disappeared in Quantum of Solace, if I'm being perfectly honest. But then that is all forgiven pretty much instantly, as we have an amazing opening shot, quite possibly the greatest opening shot in the entire series. Wonderful, harkening back to, I'm sure people have already talked about this before, but A Touch of Evil, the great Orson Welles film, which was all in one shot, and it followed around in these elaborate things. And it did that. Oh, you can tell there are some bits where, okay, yep, they cut there, digital, trickery here and there, so it isn't all filmed as one shot. But edited together like that, it was just stunning. And, of course, it's Bond in a costume. Nice callback to Roger Moore. I loved Bond. Daniel Craig had a really good swagger when he was walking around in that skeleton thing with the cane and the beautiful girl on his arm, and they're following a guy, and you're following them all around, and then he kisses her, and she's on the bed, ready for some rumpy bumpy, and then it cuts back to him, and he's, taking his thing off, and he's back in a second, love, or whatever, and it's just when that happened, I was like, okay, great. I know what Craig is doing here. He's giving a classic Bond performance, because he is Bond now, and I'm so happy that they finally, we had 3 films of him becoming Bond. I think his performance in Casino Royale and Quantum of Solace was very similar. Skyfall, it evolved a bit, and now we are there. We are at Bond. He is James Bond now, and it was so good to see him like that, just kind of effortlessly, just sort of he was almost kind of enjoying the scenery. This is just him, a day on the job for him. He's gonna go shoot some guy, and that was great. I really loved his. Like I said in my other review, I think Craig's performance throughout this film is pretty much flawless. I think he's just stunning as Bond. If he doesn't do at least one more, he needs to do at least one more, I would, hope maybe even 2. Then, of course, we have the big opening action sequence and the main, which is great. I don't think it tops Skyfall, which I was disappointed about. It's cool when they, get in the helicopter and, have a fight and stuff, but it did showcase some pretty bad CGI, which I think runs throughout much of this film. It's just not a terribly... I know that it was kind of... not rushed exactly, but, they didn't have maybe the time that they should have had. And I think that shows in some of the more, computer-heavy effects when Daniel and the bad guy are, hanging out of the helicopter. And also this opening sort of showcases another big issue that I have with this movie, and it's Thomas Newman's score, which, I've got the... where is it? I've got the soundtrack, of course, had this baby pre-ordered. How much of it is just... and I couldn't tell this in the cinema, so maybe I need to go back and watch it again. I've been listening to the Spectre CD, and I'm, of course every Bond theme reuses, every Bond composer reuses certain themes and tracks and whatnot, but I was stunned during the opening sequence because I felt like, because I listened to this, I love the Skyfall score, it's one of my very favourite scores. I think Thomas Newman did an amazing job there. And during the opening sequence, I was just watching the action, and I was like, Jesus, this is just the exact same tracks as Skyfall, and it might not be. Like, my memory might be fading me there, and there might just be new arrangements of cues that were used in Skyfall. But I was just, and it pops up a couple of times throughout the film, I'm just kind of like, they're just using the exact same music as Skyfall, and it's just kind of cheap, I think, to do that. It's a little bit like, oh, come on. I mean, yeah, I know that there are certain key themes that every Bond composer will go to, but I've never felt it was quite so blatant, or maybe I'm more forgiving of it when it's in the earlier films. John Barry would use, tracks over again. But at least, no, even then, John Barry would rearrange them, or John Barry would incorporate often the score, the main title song, into the score. And Thomas Newman has done that a couple of times in individual tracks. In Skyfall, there was that one track where Skyfall played, and then in this one, there's one, when Bond and Madeline are on the train, they play the Writings on the Wall theme, and I just kind of wish he'd do more. Like, fit it in more. Like, rewatching Casino Royale was so cool because it was like, I forgot how amazing the music is for that film and how David Arnold had blended in You Know My Name throughout the film. And I wish Thomas Newman would do more of that. But anyway, speaking of music, I've spoken before how I absolutely love and adore the Sam Smith Writings on the Wall title track, and I still do. I still think it's amazing. But oh my dear sweet lord, to the amazing opening title sequence by Daniel Kleinman, the song takes on a whole new life, and that sequence is absolutely stunning. I adore the opening title sequence of this film. It is so cool and dark and sexy and all the women, and it's so... I was in awe of it. I never wanted it to end, to be perfectly honest. I was just beautiful. This giant octopus tentacles like wrapping around the women, and I was really surprised to see past Bond characters turning up in it. When, like, Le Chiffre pops up, I was like, oh, alright. I hope Mads Mikkelsen got a nice check for this. And then Silver pops up, and M and Vesper. I was like, okay, and it's really good that they do that, because it does kind of set you up for how much of the film later on is, gonna be about harkening back to those films, and what those characters mean to Bond. Yeah, maybe a bit. I honestly, I find it a bit heavy-handed later on in the film when they do that, but for the opening title sequence, I absolutely loved it. Beautiful sequence, one of Kleinman's absolute best. And then after the opening sequence, we're back to London and back to the MI6 team that was wonderfully established in Skyfall and are beautifully used in this film. If I love one thing about this film, it's how much of Q, Moneypenny, Tanner and M we get. It's just, it's after being deprived of those characters for so long. Even in Skyfall, we didn't really know Moneypenny was Moneypenny until the end. Q was kind of in it a little bit. And now to see them so involved in the action, so involved in Bond's life, going, helping him out in the field, like them going out in the field, Q goes to the psychiatric clinic. I absolutely adore it, I absolutely love it. I love that, I think Rafe Fiennes as M is going to be defined by, or distinguished at least, by the amount of action that he can actually be involved in, because obviously Judi Dench couldn't really be involved in, she couldn't exactly crash a car and then run away to hide. This older lady. And I'm just not to say that every M should necessarily be out in the field, but I like that we have that with Rafe Fiennes, and I love it when he finally has that confrontation with Andrew Scott's character C at the end, and it's so... He's a great M. I'm really happy with him so far, and I love the little exchange with him and Moneypenny when he's like, was it your birthday? And she's like, no. And then he goes away and then she's like, that was last week. I like that he's kind of... We saw it at the end of Skyfall where Bond comes in and he's like, how's the arm, sir? And he's like, what? Oh, right, yeah. I like that he's a little bit dithery. Like, there's just a little bit of dodderiness to him where he's just sort of like, what? A little bit oblivious to everything that's going on. Ben Whishaw continues to impress and amaze as Q. Like, to replace Desmond Llewellyn is impossible, because he is so grounded and iconic in that role. But Ben Whishaw is doing a completely different take, which is so Ben Whishaw has a luxury that John Cleese never had. In that, with John Cleese, they were just trying to kind of do the same thing. With Ben Whishaw, they're doing a different thing, and it works completely. Naomi Harris, Moneypenny, love. Rory Kinnear, I love as Tanner, and I just wish he would actually get his name on the poster. They just never, it's like all the other MI6 regulars are on this poster. It's like, Ben Whishaw, Naomi Harris, Andre Fiennes as M. No Rory Kinnear. How many films does he have to be in before he gets his name on one of these sodding things? But yeah, love the MI6 team, and in a fantastic surprise, probably my biggest surprise in the film, we have a short cameo by Judi Dench, who, if I'm not mistaken, her outfit and the backdrop and everything was kind of designed to look like when she's in her apartment, in her house in Skyfall, and that roulette thing comes up and she clicks it and then the names are released. I think I'm right in assuming that video must have been, or in the universe, the film must have been taken immediately after that scene happened. That was a great surprise. I loved seeing her back, and I think technically now she has surpassed Bernard Lee's record in terms of number of years working, as that character. But my main problem with that is that she was not in it, or that video segment was not long enough for me to fully grasp entirely what the plot is and what they're setting up here, because that was like, honestly, that's my main bugbear of this film. Like, I don't really understand quite fully what, basically her video message consists of, Bond, there's this man, go kill him, and that's it. And from that, Bond, I guess, follows the trail all the way to Spectre, but then it's just sort of, I feel like Bond is kind of aimless for a lot of it, because obviously he's under no official instruction or anything. He's just kind of going on a hunch for about half the film, and I think I kind of wanted a little bit more than that. Like, if he was like, or if he knew something other than there's this bloke, go kill him, and just the whole general wider plot of surveillance. I'm not sure I fully comprehend exactly what because obviously surveillance is a bad thing, and we don't want Big Brother watching us all the time, but I was kind of confused as to what the organisation were going to do with all of this technology. Like, when Andrew Scott's going on about his, surveillance is the thing, and, the future, and, we're going to have in every camera and whatever, and I'm just sort of like, well, what does this, why is this, what are they going to do with that? Like, how is this going to help them achieve world domination? Is it helping them achieve world domination? Maybe I just missed the line, like, I've only seen it, like, once. So forgive me if I'm sort of fluffing up this plot. But that's what I gathered, and I'm not sure if I fully comprehend what the threats and stakes were supposed to be here. And then after London we get to Rome, and we get Monica Bellucci's character, who is obviously not in the film for long enough. She is an incredibly interesting and intriguing figure, and I want to know more about her. Like, she delivers a wonderful performance. I really, really like Monica Bellucci in this film, and more than anything, I love when she goes home and she picks up the whiskey and she's having a drink and she's walking through her house and she walks out to the pond, the fountain thing, and at first, you're seeing these guys in the shadows behind her, and I'm like, oh my god, does she know that they're there? Like, what are they doing? And then it turns out that, yeah, she knows they're there. She knows what's happening. She knows this game. And I really, really liked that. I thought it was just beautiful. And then when Bond comes in and saves her, that was really cool. Yeah, she just wasn't in it for long enough. She should have been in it. But I do like that we got a little nod to Felix. Because she's obviously, going to be killed or whatever, and Bond's like, yeah, got my friend Felix, he'll sort you out. I just thought it was a shame that we didn't... after the Judi Dench cameo especially, I was like, oh my, we're going to have a surprise cameo from Jeffrey Wright as Felix. I really hoped we would. Maybe even towards the end of the film where we see that she is okay. She's not, dead, because to not return to her, I thought was quite disappointing. And then after Monica Bellucci, we have, a scene that was, heavily featured in a lot of Spectre's trailers, which is the Spectre Boardroom meeting. And it was, the first sort of, apart from the funeral earlier on, we saw the back of his head. It was our first real sort of glimpse of Christoph Waltz as the film's main villain. Now I'm gonna come back to him because I have some feelings about Christoph Waltz in this film. But at this point, he's just a very short shadow, sort of whispering in other people's ears and having them sort of say and do things. And then we get Mr. Hinks come in, Dave Bautista, who is really good and has an interesting villain quirk of, like, is it like steel or stone, like thumbnails or something that he uses to, like, press a guy's eyes in, which is quite horrifying and cool and interesting. And then after that we have a great car chase sequence, which is, you know, one of the first for a Daniel Craig one, and I absolutely loved. It's quite a funny sequence, really, but I loved that when he, like, presses, like, one of the gadgets, they're like, yep, no, we've not loaded the ammunition, and he's like, you're kidding me. I loved that. That was so much fun. But I will say that there was one particular gag, and I know that, like, it's tradition for Bond films to have some, like, eye-rolling gags where it's like, alright, okay, and it was because the car's being fitted for 009, and when Bond turns on he flips the switch, and then it's like, music enabled for 009, and it's like, what is it? Is it Elvis or something, or some kind of old track comes on, and Bond's like, oh my goodness sake, and it felt like a lesser joke for this series and this film. I was just like, oh, really? We're gonna do that? We're gonna make fun of 009's music taste? And the stuff with the old guy I thought was a little bit like, okay, come on. And, but, you know, it was a great car chase overall. It was exciting, lots of in and outs of streets. It's fun seeing Moneypenny and having a little glimpse into her personal life. There's some bloke in a bed. And seeing her apartment, that was cool. I loved Bond using the ejector seat, like, you know, on himself. I mean, Bond, as far as I can tell, I don't think has he ever used an ejector seat for himself. Like, obviously he ejected the villain in Goldfinger, in Die of the Day he used it to flip the car over. So that was, you know, that was quite a quirk. And, because at first, oh my goodness, when he, like, because the button says air on it, and he goes to flip it, and then the seatbelt, like, tightens around him, and I'm like, oh my god, the car is going to fly. And then I'm like, no, they can't do this, no, I mean, god, if an exploding pen is too much for this incarnation of Bond, then surely a flying car is. But then, sure enough, he's ejected out and the car goes into the river. And then he, you know, takes off the parachute and casually walks away. Classic Bond moment, love it. And then after all the fun in Rome, we go to Austria to meet our returning villain, Mr. White, who is, like, dying of radiation poisoning and ends up shooting himself, which I do not like. I wanted more of Mr. White in this film, and that is, you know, I kind of assumed that he'd maybe just have, like, the one scene or two. But how he dies, how he just, like, shoots himself, I was really disappointed. I was so like, no, I don't accept that. This great, enigmatic, like, mysterious figure who was, like, drifted in and out of a couple of the films so far, for him to just have a relatively, what I thought, weak ending, I was just like, nah, and I just had they kind of dropped in, like, oh, he's dying of radiation poisoning, so he's gonna die anyway, so this doesn't really, you know, impact terribly. I was disappointed with how he ended his involvement in this series, but his inclusion was a delight. This could easily have just been any random, made-up character for this particular film, and the fact that they went to the effort of getting, you know, Jesper Christensen back and tying it in with the other two Craig films was a real delight. It's good to see him play such a pivotal role in the plot. And, you know, dare I say, feel a bit of sympathy for the guy, like, you know. He, you know, like, I feel like they make too heavy-handed an attempt at making him seem like a, not necessarily a good guy, but when Bond's like, you know, did you develop a conscience? And it's like, oh, okay, so we're trying to make him out to be quite good, even though he's quite a despicable, is he despicable? I don't know, he saves Bond in Casino Royale, and Quantum of Solace is pretty bad. But, you know, just the fact that he was back was great. And then, you know, it leads Bond to the film's Bond girl in the amazing location of that psychiatric clinic, which is just the classic, you know, wonderful Bond location. Madeline Swan, played by Léa Seydoux, who is okay in this film. I like her. I love Léa Seydoux. Like, I think she's absolutely Blue is the Warmest Colour was terrific, and she was amazing in it. And I've seen her in other things, she's equally as fantastic, but just the role of Madeline Swan is quite thin, and the whole idea, the concept that her and Bond fall in love is one of my big bugbears in this film. I can't fathom, like, how they thought, like, especially because we keep calling back to Vesper, we keep calling back to her, we see her face, characters mention her, and that was a great love story between Bond and Vesper. Like, I genuinely, in Casino Royale, I watched it very recently again, and you get that they fall in love. You get every bit of that, those scenes hits home. You get these two characters falling in love, and it's wonderfully crafted. Perfect. And for here, it's just sort of like, I was just thinking of Madeline as sort of like a regular Bond girl. Right, yeah, I'll probably go for her at the end, have a bit of, shagging, whatever. But then when she says, I love you, and then I'm like, okay, well, I guess Bond girls have said that before, like Tatiana said that, and, and Bond obviously doesn't reciprocate it, but there are parts in the film where I feel like, especially towards the end, like when Christoph Waltz is showing the video footage of Bond and Mr. White. Mr. White's going to kill himself. And they're watching the video footage. This is the first time Madeline's seen it, and Bond is going, oh no, turn it off, and he's getting really big, and he's like, turn it off, screaming, turn it off, and I'm like, oh my god, I missed something, like, what's going to happen? There's like, Christoph Waltz edited the video footage to make it look like Bond shoots Mr. White, is there something happening? And it's just the video footage, and I guess he doesn't want Madeline to watch her dad die. Which, fair enough, like, yeah, in a real-world situation, that would be quite a concern. But I didn't feel like it warranted that kind of an emotional outburst from Bond for this woman. When I feel like, I felt like someone like Sean Connery, or even Roger Moore would have handled that moment better in just more of a quiet, somber, like, don't look, just, don't look at the screen, just, keep your head down or whatever. But for Daniel Craig to get so, like, uppity about it, I was a bit like, I don't know, that was kind of a bit too big for me, I thought. Anyway, after the psychiatric clinic, another amazing action sequence with the plane. Bond's chasing Madeline and Hinks in the car, and Q's there, he's doing something, but oh my lord, the bar scene in the health clinic is psychiatric clinic, sorry, is absolutely wonderful when Bond's like, vodka martini, chicken nut and the guy's like, we don't do alcohol here. And then Q orders him the weird energy drink, and then Bond's like, cut out the middle, man, chuck it down the toilet. Love that, it's great. There's so many great moments of humour in this film, even though I may have groaned a little bit during the car chase. I think, excuse me, I think every other bit of humour works really well. And, the audience were laughing, the audience were having a good time. I was seeing this in a full auditorium, but the one joke, the thing that got the biggest laugh, and I'm not even sure if it's intended as a joke, but it's when Mallory, M and C are, having their little face-off, and C thinks he's got M, he's got the gun on him, and, he's like, well, I think we know what M stands for, moron, and then he, like, click, and there's no ammo in the gun, he's like, trying to shoot, and then M's like, well, I think we know what C stands for, and everyone in the audience erupted into laughter. It was great. I loved that moment, because it's obviously, like, it's a naughty word. And then after the psychiatric clinic and that great action sequence, we go to Tangier, and there's a hotel where Mr. White and his ex-wife used to stay, and then Bond and Madeline are there, and they're sort of flirting a little bit, and then they find a secret room. And in that secret room is a tape marked Vesper interrogation, and at that point I was like, again, because of seeing Judi Dench earlier on in the film, I was like, oh my god, Bond's going to play the thing, and we're going to have some new Eva Green footage or something, and then he doesn't. And I thought that was a really interesting moment, actually, and it probably, maybe it harks back to what I said earlier about Mr. White and how I feel like they were kind of setting us up to almost like him, or think of him as not a completely heartless, soulless bastard, to be perfectly honest. But then the film quickly moves on to, Spectre's, big lair, really, in a classic, classic Bond tradition, Bond and the girl are greeted. I should point out, actually, before that, there is an incredible train sequence, an incredible train fight, which is just so well choreographed and excellently done between Bond and Mr. Hinks. But I will say that Mr. Hinks' exit from the film I found incredibly disappointing. Bond wraps the rope around his neck and then he's like dragged out of the train by some barrels. And I was kind of like, okay, he's coming back. We haven't seen a body. He survived. This is like a Jaws thing when he throws him out of the train. He's coming back at the end. And then he doesn't. And then I'm kind of like, well, are they going to bring him back for a future Bond film a la Jaws? I'm not really sure what the intention is there, but either way, I thought it was a very weak exit for the film for that henchman. And then onto the Spectre lair, which is great. Bond and the girl are greeted by a receptionist who takes them to their rooms, which is always like a hotel room. They have a change of dress, and then they go and they're schmoozed by Christoph Waltz, who at this point is Franz Oberhauser, but of course he is Stavro Blofeld, which is revealed in this sequence of the film. And, in that great Spectre tradition, there's a load of, dozens of, staff around him, dozens of bodyguards, whatever. And Bond is interrogated by, they do the drilling thing in his head, which is kind of cool and creepy and weird, and there's a white Persian cat, which I had to laugh, I was so happy that the cat was back. But Christoph Waltz's reveal, if you can even call it that, of being Blofeld is just one of the big disappointments for me, because it was just, it bothers me that they even felt like they needed to pretend that he wasn't going to be Blofeld, because they kept saying, oh no, he's Franz Oberhauser, he's not Blofeld, and it's just like, why do you even need to do this, go through this, pretense anymore? It's like, people were sick of, it was bad enough in, that second Star Trek film when that particular actor was revealed as being that particular character, because it's like, everyone kind of knew it, so why did you feel the need to, say, I would rather than just say, Christoph Waltz is Blofeld. And then, there's no big... And then I was just so disappointed because it was just so obvious. All the way through the, the hype, I've been going, oh, it's Andrew Scott, it's Monica Bellucci, it's Ralph Fiennes, it could be anyone else but him. And the fact that it is, I was just like, okay. And then, of course, he gets the scar as Bond and Madeline escape the facility. I just don't find that Christoph Waltz in this film, let me get this straight, I love Christoph Waltz in Inglourious Bastards and other stuff that I've seen him in. He's a wonderful actor. Inglourious Bastards is one of my favourite films and he is amazing in it. But in this film, to be perfectly honest, I found him weak, and I'm really disappointed because I was hoping, even if it was Christoph Waltz Blofeld, my big hope was that finally we're going to have an iconic portrayal of Blofeld. Other than Donald Pleasance, or, just something, because since Donald Pleasance, the Blofeld has really left a terribly lasting impression. And even Donald Pleasance's Blofeld is kind of a bit of a joke now. He's short, he's bald, and whatever, Dr. Evil, all that kind of stuff. And for Christoph Waltz, I was hoping for a Blofeld a bit more akin to the Fleming novels, who was more of a physical match for Bond. And, they could have had a bit of a brawl or something, but Christoph Waltz is just a very short man, and he looks it, and just how his whole performance was just so... After the big, over-the-top craziness of Javier Bardem, and I'm not saying that every Bond villain should be that, but it's Blofeld, come on, and he's just sort of softly spoken, but not even in a creepy way, I don't think. It's just... And I absolutely hate the whole surrogate brother thing, or adopted brother thing, sorry. It reduces Blofeld to being just this petty, kiddie issues. Just go to a psychotherapist and work through these issues, dude, because it's really not... I get that in this day and age there has to be some kind of personal connection, has to be some kind of personal tie between Bond and the villain. But to do this, which was just so lame, it was like, oh, my dad adopted you and then he liked you more than me, is just like, what? It's just that Blofeld is supposed to be the greatest criminal mastermind that ever lived, and to just reduce this down to parental issues, I thought just, it made this enigmatic, interesting character less enigmatic and interesting if you can boil down they explained his evilness too soon, for me. It's like, the Joker in Batman, I don't know why he's insane. He kind of, exists as this anarchist. And, to explain away Blofeld's, character like that, I was disappointed. But more, I was equally as disappointed in Christoph Waltz's performance. But anyway, we get a big explosion as the building blows up, which again is another big disappointment for me because this building is full of dozens, hundreds of Spectre agents, and I was expecting this huge, elaborate sequence with Bond and Madeleine escaping, and instead he shoots about half a dozen guys and then the whole place blows up. It's just kind of like, okay, would have liked to have seen a bit more of this, but I get it that we've got to rush to the climax, rush back to London, and Bond's teaming up with the MI6 regulars. Amazing, love it, love it, love it. Great stuff in London. Bond's name written on the memorial wall was great. I can't wait to freeze frame that when I get the Blu-ray and see if Silver's real name is on there, and even maybe Alec Trevelyan. I don't know, it's just a little nod. Obviously this is a different continuity now, but that's one thing that I do like about Blofeld being in this film, actually, is that it kind of fixes the whole continuity issue and confirms that the Daniel Craig timeline is indeed its brand new own timeline, with nothing to do with the previous versions of Bond, which, I like that, I'm all for that. Anyway, being in the ruins of the old MI6 building is cool and exciting. Bond having to rescue Madeleine before the place blows up, cool and exciting. Boat chase is okay. Helicopter getting shot down is okay. Blofeld crawling out and then sort of saying, egging Bond on to put a bullet in him. Not so keen on that. Not so keen on that at all. No. Blofeld is arrested, which is kind of interesting. And I guess that, opens up the possibility of a return, and maybe he'd be better in a return, in a different film. I don't know, we'll see. But then Bond gets the DB5 back and whisks off with Madeleine, and Q's like, I thought you'd gone. And then I'm kind of confused, so are we supposed to believe that Bond has quit? Is he just driving off into the sunset with Madeleine? Is that what this is? And then next time, are we going to have Madeleine back? Are they going to get married? I mean, it does open up a lot of questions. Roaring, Rip Roaring, rendition of the Bond theme, which I believe is the exact same version of the Bond theme they used in Skyfall, which bothers me, because just get a new arrangement of it, for Christ's sake. I'm sick of hearing that one particular arrangement over and over and over again. Because I'm pretty sure that was the one that they used in Casino Royale, which is just come on, just do it, just get the orchestra to do it. So, yeah, that's kind of my spoiler run-through of Spectre, and for me, it's a 7. I don't give ratings out of 10 on these reviews, but 7 out of 10 is where I'd place this. It's good, it's, fun, exciting adventure, there's lots of stuff that I love and adore and, think is amazing, lots of stuff that I don't think is so, deserving of adoration. But how does everyone else feel about Christoph Waltz's Blofeld? That is the big thing that I'm just if you're watching this on my Facebook, please don't post anything on the Facebook page. I don't want to spoil this for anyone. Just keep it on the YouTube. Please, try to be, respectful for people around the world who haven't had the chance to see the film yet. But that particular thing is one that I'm fascinated to know what people think. If they think it was, a good villain, a good casting choice, I'm fascinated to know. And just with your, overall appreciation of the film as well, people have been mostly very positive, and I'm positive. This is positive. A 7 out of 10 film is still a good film. It's still a good rating. Very happy that we have a Daniel Craig Bond film that is a classic Bond story, classic Bond formula. It's, it's going to be in regular rotation in my viewings, and I can't wait to see it again already. I saw Skyfall 5 times at the cinema, and I hope to see this one more. So, please let me know on my YouTube page what you think of this, and until next time, Bond fans, so long for now.